In this video, we're going to explain the concept of a function. So a function by definition is something that takes an input, does some sort of mathematical operations to it, and brings you the output. So the input of the function is always the x values. You plug in x inside the function and you get the output to be the y values. This is the output of the function. Sometimes we call the input the domain of the function, and the output sometimes we call it the range of the function. So this is simply the concept of the function. You plug in different values of x and you get values of y. So let's take an example. If you have f of x is equal to, let's say, x squared plus 1. So as you put values of x inside the function, it's going to return outputs which are the values of y. So let's say if I put 2 inside the function, so this is how we denote it, f of 2. This means that I remove each x and plug in 2. So this becomes 2 squared plus 1, which is going to be 5. So you basically remove each x in the function and replace it with 2, as if you put 2 inside the x of the function to get the output value, which is going to be 5 in this case. If I want to get f of, let's say, 5, so this means I remove each x and plug in 5 inside the function, so this becomes 5 squared plus 1, which is 26. What if I have a different function, which we write it a function of x, and that contains 2x values, like x squared minus 2x. So the same thing applies if you want to find the f of negative 1. So this means that you remove each x and you will plug in negative 1 replacing the x. But notice that I always like to do that in a bracket so that I don't confuse myself. So if I remove this x and plug negative 1, I like writing it in brackets so that I know that the square is on both the negative and the 1. And in the same sense, I just remove this x and plug in negative 1 as well. So now I can simplify this. So negative 1 squared is going to be 1, and negative 2 multiplied by negative 1 is going to be positive 2. So you simply add 1 and 2 and you get 3. So this is basically the concept of the function. You plug in values of x, you get the outputs, which are the values of y. So let's expand on that and talk about composite functions. So composite by definition is when the function is composed of 2 or 3 or 4 parts and so on. So let's say you have f of x to be x squared plus 2x. So if you want to find f of, let's say, as we said, 3, so you just remove each x and plug in 3. And then you can go ahead and calculate these values to get 15. But if you have, let's say, f of k, so this is exactly the same concept. You remove each x in the function and plug in k. So this becomes k squared plus 2k, right? What if you have a different function? Let's call it g of x, and let's have its equation to be 2x plus 1. Now, if you want to find f of g of x, this is what we call a composite function. So this means f of g of x, this means that you want to plug g of x as a whole inside the f. This is what we're doing here. So you remove each x and you'll plug in 2x plus 1 inside the function as a whole. So if you remove this x, you're going to plug 2x plus 1, which is the equivalent of g of x, right? Squared. and then plus, you remove this x and plug in the g of x as a whole as well. So this becomes 2 multiplied by 2x plus 1. So you can go ahead and simplify this, or you can leave it depending on whether the choices you have look like that or not. What if you want to find g of f of x? Well, this is kind of different, right? Because in this case, you want to plug the f of x inside the g. Remember that we always think of the function inside out, because if this is g of x, you're plugging in x inside the g, right? The function g. But if you have here f of x, then again, you're plugging in f of x, that what's inside of g. So this means that you'll go to the g of x, you remove each x, because now you want it to be f of x, right? G of f of x. So you remove each x in the g, and you plug in the value of, or the expression for f of x as a whole, which is x squared plus 2x. And then you can add the plus 1 here, right? So you can write this over here. So this is x squared plus 2x, and then all plus 1. So you can notice the difference between these two expressions, because it depends. If you have the f outside and the g inside, this means that you'll put the g inside the f. Replace each x inside the f with g of x. But here you have the g outside and the f inside, so you'll replace each x with f of x. So what if you have, let's say, f of g of 2? Remember here, we always start inside out. So I think first that I'm going to put the 2 inside the g first. So I go here, if I want g of 2, then this means that I remove each x inside the g and plug in 2. So this g of 2 is going to give me 5. So if I know that this is as a whole is equal to 5, now I have a very simple question which I want f of 5. So I take the 5 and replace x in the f with 5. So if this is my function, then I'll replace x with 5. So this becomes 5 squared plus 2 times 5. And this is going to give me 35. And this is my final answer.